My fiancé's closest female friend attended a pool party on a major weekend party. She ended up drugged and pregnant with a child of unknown paternity. At our wedding, Marcus publicly announced that he was annulling the engagement. Grace, he said, I have to take responsibility for Valerie and the child she's carrying. Otherwise, she won't survive. I calmly took off my diamond ring and agreed to annul the engagement. In my previous life, I had adamantly refused, publicly exposing Valerie's premarital pregnancy scandal right then and there. She was cast out of her home, subjected to online harassment, and eventually suffered a mental breakdown and jumped to her death. When found out, he was expressionless, but after our wedding, he stripped me naked, locked me in his basement, and allowed the thugs he hired to assault me. If it weren't for you, Valerie wouldn't have died. I'll make you pay 100-fold for all the suffering she endured. It wasn't until I was tortured to death that I truly understood how much he hated me. When I opened my eyes again, I was back to the exact moment he proposed to annul our engagement. At the wedding reception, the champagne tower sparkled under the brilliant lights. The familiar scent of cologne, mingled with the floral fragrance of the ballroom, filled my nostrils. In my ears, Marcus's words struck like thunder. Grace, I can't marry you today. I clenched the bouquet in my hands, my knuckles turning white. This sentence, this scene, it was exactly as it had been in my previous life. The ballroom fell silent in an instant. I could feel hundreds of eyes piercing me. In those gazes, there was surprise, schadenfreude, and mostly, anticipation of witnessing the downfall of the Vance heiress. You disgraceful son. What nonsense are you spouting? Put the ring on Grace's finger, now. Chairman, my father-in-law in my previous life, roared, breaking the silence. At the same time, a delicate female voice chimed in perfectly. Marcus, I'm Eving. You don't have to do this for me. Marcus's voice immediately panicked. Valerie, don't go. I swear I'll take responsibility for you. The guest tables erupted in murmurs. I heard someone whisper, isn't that the Hayes family's illegitimate daughter? I heard she was in a fight at a bar a few days ago. TSK, today she actually dares to snatch the Vance heiress's fiancé. Chairman angrily threw his wine glass. Security. Send my son to the lounge. Mr. Marcus, excuse us. Several security guards stepped forward, ready to intervene. Wait, I pulled off my veil, and my vision suddenly cleared. Marcus stood there in a custom-tailored suit, but his arms were wrapped around Valerie, who was wearing a white dress. Valerie looked up at me, then quickly buried her face back in Marcus's chest, her shoulders shaking with sobs. When saw me remove my veil, a flicker of panic crossed his eyes, swiftly replaced by disgust. Grace, you. Mr. Marcus, there's no need to say more, I interrupted him coldly. I'm not going through with this wedding. Marcus clearly hadn't expected me to be so composed. After a moment of stunned silence, he actually pulled a fountain pen from his suit's inner pocket and wrote me a check on the spot. Consider this $10 million as my compensation to you. Marcus handed the check to me, stating in a deep voice, you're the Vance heiress, you'll still find a good man after annulling the engagement. But is different. Without me, she would die? I took the check, a light laugh escaping my lips. Mr. Marcus, you worry too much. Miss looks full of vitality, with strong lungs. She doesn't look like someone who couldn't survive on her own. Valerie stiffened at my words, then burst into even harder sobs. Grace, Marcus and I are just close friends. He's doing this for anyway, please, let us be together. She looked up at me, her eyes brimming with tears, but a hint of a provocative smirk played on her lips. This expression was all too familiar. In my previous life, it was this very look that made me lose control and expose her secret premarital pregnancy, leading to her jumping to her death. Marcus, in turn, blamed me for everything. From then on, I was cast into hell. After the wedding, he imprisoned me in his villa. Every night, he would force-feed me drugs, lock me in the basement, and let the thugs he hired abuse me. Their filthy hands ripped open my clothes, and my cries and struggles were met with blow after blow. Grace, this is what you deserve for killing Valerie. Marcus's voice, like a devil's whisper, echoed in my ears. Miss? Someone's call pulled me back to reality. I realized all the guests were waiting for my reaction. I took a deep breath and carefully placed the check into my clutch bag. Since Marcus has made up his mind, I, Grace, am not one to cling. I ask everyone here today to bear witness, from this moment on, Marcus and I are completely severed. We have nothing to do with each other. I slowly walked out of the ballroom, hearing Mrs. Eleanor's anxious call from behind me. Grace, don't say things you'll regret. She chased after me in her high heels, lowering her voice. Marcus is young and hot-headed, just momentarily confused. All these guests are watching, and both our families are reputable. I took a half step back, creating a suitable distance between us, and nodded slightly. Mrs. Eleanor, I've accepted the check. From now on, Miss will be your daughter-in-law. My voice was neither too loud nor too soft, just clear enough for the ladies nearby to hear. Mrs. Eleanor's face instantly turned pale. You! Chairman's furious roar came from behind me. You disgraceful son. The group's reputation, today it's all ruined by you. Marcus retorted defiantly, what's wrong with protecting Valerie? Valerie has a genuine personality, 100 times better than those hypocritical socialites. You. Chairman trembled with rage, then suddenly rolled his eyes and fell backward stiffly. Husband! Mrs. Eleanor shrieked, rushing to him. The entire ballroom immediately dissolved into chaos. I walked toward the hotel exit without looking back, a scene of complete chaos behind me. As I stepped through the threshold, I heard someone whisper, that heiress is quite tough. Isn't she? Anyone else would have fainted from crying by now. Mr. Marcus is really too much. A barely perceptible curve played on my lips. In my previous life, I had knelt here, weeping. This life, I would make everyone remember how I left with my head held high. Outside the hotel, a fine drizzle was falling, dampening the hem of my gown. I looked down at Sage, who was crouching at the street corner, rummaging through a trash can. His emaciated fingers fumbled in the garbage for a moldy piece of bread. Take this and buy something to eat. I removed the diamond bracelet from my wrist and gently placed it in his tattered hat. The bracelet made a crisp sound as it landed in the hat, and Sage trembled, lifting his face, half-burned and disfigured. Only then did I realize that he was not only disfigured but also blind, his eyes without focus. He reached out a trembling hand to touch the bracelet, his rough fingertips brushing my wrist, leaving a faint trace. Thank you, miss. His voice was hoarse, as if his throat had been scorched by embers. I smiled bitterly, shook my head, and turned to leave. In my previous life, when I was imprisoned, I, too, had fumbled for food in the darkness like him. Now that I had a second chance at life, I could barely protect myself. This bracelet was the only thing I could do to help him. I didn't return to Vance. Following the path etched in my memory, I arrived at a secluded apartment in Northwood. This was a property my mother had secretly acquired before she died, unknown even to my father. Pushing open the door, the apartment was dusty, but the basic facilities were still intact. I carefully took off my jewelry, intending to exchange it for cash. My father valued his reputation above all else. I couldn't go back to the Vance family. Indeed, the next day, major financial media outlets broke the news. The headline, Thompson announces of ties with Grace, stung my eyes. I took a deep breath and turned to walk toward a second-hand luxury store. Half a month later, Grace's Cafe opened on Northwood's busiest commercial street. I had used the money from selling my jewelry, plus the check from Marcus, to take over this storefront. The first floor sold coffee, and the second floor had several private rooms. Did you hear? This is owned by that Vance heiress who was dumped at her engagement party. TSK, a prominent heiress reduced to running a coffee shop, how pitiful. For 3 days after the cafe opened, it was packed to the brim. Everyone wanted to see how I, the abandoned woman, was faring. I wore a simple cotton maxi dress, personally making coffee behind the counter, ignoring the pointing and whispering gazes. Suddenly, there was a commotion on the street, and a red sports car pulled up in front of the cafe. The car door opened, revealing Valerie's meticulously made-up face. Grace, long time no see. She got out with a sweet smile, followed by 4 security guards. I put down my coffee cup and looked at her expressionlessly. Miss, what brings you here? Valerie glanced around, her eyes flashing with jealousy at the sight of the cafe's crowded interior. She pulled a large red wedding invitation from her clutch bag and deliberately raised her voice. Marcus and my wedding is set for 3 days from now. I specifically came to deliver an invitation to you. All the customers in the cafe perked up their ears, some even put down their coffee to watch the spectacle. I looked at the gilded wedding invitation in her hand and took a deep breath. Thank you, miss, for the thoughtful gesture. Oh dear. Valerie suddenly exclaimed, tearing the invitation to shreds in front of everyone. I see. Completely forgot, you're the one who was annulled, it's bad luck. I can't let it spoil my wedding. The shredded paper fluttered to the ground like red butterflies, and the cafe erupted in laughter. I clenched my fists, my nails digging deep into my palms. Miss, if you're here for coffee, you're welcome. If you're here to cause trouble, please leave. Heh, Valerie sneered, her expression suddenly changing. Grace, do you still think you're the Vance heiress? Chairman disowned you, the whole city knows. You're just a coffee seller now, yet you still dare to act high and mighty with me? She violently waved her hand. Men, give her a good lesson. Let her know her place. The 4 security guards lunged at me ferociously, pinning me to the ground. My forehead hit the counter corner hard, and blood immediately streamed down. Let go of me. I struggled fiercely, but they held me down tightly. Valerie looked down at me, her eyes full of malicious glee. Rip off her clothes. Let everyone see what kind of person this former heiress truly is now. Rip, my collar was torn open, revealing the pale skin beneath. The men watching let out lewd jeers, yet no one came to help. I closed my eyes in despair, memories of being assaulted in my previous life washing over me like a tide. Stop. A furious roar exploded like thunder, and the security guards holding me down suddenly screamed. The pressure on me lightened, and I opened my eyes to see a dark figure darting through the crowd like a phantom. Wherever he went, the burly men cried out and fell to the ground. Valerie retreated in horror. You, who are you? How dare you interfere with Thompson's affairs? The man stood with his back to me in the light, his tattered clothes fluttering in the wind. When he slowly turned around, I gasped, it was Sage, the blind homeless man. His eyes were unfocused, yet he was accurately facing Valerie. Valerie covered her crimson lips with her designer handbag, a mocking smirk playing at the corner of her eye. Oh dear, Miss must be so desperate she couldn't marry Marcus, that she's now hooking up with this filthy vagrant? The crowd immediately burst into laughter. My fingertips trembled with rage. Valerie, stop slandering me. Slandering you? She chuckled, surveying the onlookers. This vagrant is protecting you so fiercely, who would believe there's nothing going on between you? Before she finished speaking, there was a sharp slap. Sage had moved with lightning speed, delivering a solid slap across Valerie's face. Ah! Valerie stumbled backward, clutching her face, her carefully styled hair slightly disheveled. Her eyes red with fury, she glared at Sage. You dirty beggar, how dare you hit me? Guards! Beat him to death. The 4 security guards immediately released me and lunged at Sage. But to my shock, the seemingly frail vagrant moved like a phantom among the 4 men, each move precise and ruthless. In just a few breaths, the 4 men were writhing on the ground, groaning. Valerie's face turned ashen. She hid behind a pillar and shrieked, quick, go get Mr. Marcus. She threw a designer watch at a passerby, who immediately bowed and scraped before rushing out. Sage's expression darkened slightly, and he started to walk toward Valerie. Valerie stiffened her neck and yelled, Grace, tell him to stop. Otherwise, Marcus won't let you off. I had experienced Marcus's ruthlessness firsthand in my previous life. Don't. I pulled my clothes tighter and spoke up to stop him, but ignored me, his body radiating murderous intent. Ah! Help! Valerie screamed, scurrying away in fear. Just then, Marcus burst into the cafe with a team of security guards. Valerie immediately threw herself into his arms, crying pitifully. Marcus, save me! Grace wants to kill me! Marcus roared, and the security guards immediately pinned Sage to the ground. Though was skilled, 2 fists were no match for 4 hands. Marcus cast a contemptuous glance at Sage, then turned high. Furious gaze on me. Grace, I know you hold a grudge. But annulling the engagement was my decision. If you have a problem, take it out on me, why bother Valerie? I sneered, pointing at the shredded wedding invitation on the floor. Mr. Marcus, why don't you see for yourself who came looking for trouble today? Hearing this, Valerie immediately flinched in Marcus's arms and sobbed, Marcus, I just had good intentions. I wanted to tell Grace that we were getting married. If she still likes you, I'm willing to let her stay in touch with you. Valerie! Marcus's voice trembled with emotion. Why would you humble yourself like this? I told you I'd take responsibility for you for life. I couldn't believe my ears. Valerie's ability to twist black into white was truly astonishing, but believed her without question. He turned to me and said coldly, Grace, we've annulled the engagement. From now on, please stop bothering me. With that, he moved to help Valerie leave. Oh dear! Valerie suddenly let out a delicate cry, her body going limp. Marcus immediately grasped her, looking worried. Valerie! What's wrong? Valerie's eyes shifted, glancing at Sage, who was pinned to the ground, and she said in a soft voice, that vagrant just bumped into me. Marcus immediately reached out to touch her flat stomach. Are you hurt? Valerie quickly turned to avoid his hand. No, I just twisted my ankle. Marcus swept her into his arms without a word and turned to the security guards, saying sharply, this beggar assaulted my wife. Beat him to death. Valerie gave me a triumphant smirk from Marcus's arms. I rushed forward to shield Sage. Stop. Marcus, as the CEO of Thompson, how can you be so utterly disregardful of human life? Marcus narrowed his eyes. You're siding with a vagrant against me? I stood my ground. Today, no matter who he is, I won't let you harm him in the slightest. Good. Very good. Marcus's anger turned into a furious laugh. The more you protect him, the more I'll beat him. With that, he actually grabbed a nearby chair himself and swung it hard at Sage's head. In the nick of time, a figure swiftly blocked Sage, catching the chair with his bare hands. Before anyone could react, several SWAT officers in uniform strode into the cafe, their gear glinting coldly at their waists. In broad daylight, Mr. Marcus, are you attempting a public assault? The middle-aged man leading them was in plain clothes, but his imposing figure and sharp eyes exuded an unmistakable air of stern authority. His gaze swept across the room, and when he saw the disheveled man pinned on the ground, his pupils constricted sharply. He then subtly retracted his gaze and asked in a deep voice, "What's going on?" The moment Marcus saw the newcomer, his expression subtly changed. He immediately adopted a respectful demeanor, unconsciously bowing slightly. "Director, what brings you here personally?" "A misunderstanding, it's all a misunderstanding." He rubbed his hands together, forcing a dry laugh. "This man assaulted my Valerie, I just wanted to teach him a lesson." "Nonsense." I stepped forward, pointing at the shredded wedding invitation on the floor. "It was Valerie who brought people to provoke me, and he only acted to protect me." Marcus glared at me malevolently, but I glared back without fear. Just then, Sage on the ground gave a slight cough. This cough seemed like a signal. Director's eyes sharpened, and he took a step forward, an invisible pressure enveloping the entire room. "Mr. Marcus, you publicly bullied others and attempted to inflict harm. I will report this to my superiors as it happened." Marcus's face instantly turned ashen. Everyone knew that Director was in charge of a special department, wielding considerable power over many people, and even Marcus's father had to show him deference. Cold sweat beaded on Marcus's forehead. Director. I was confused. Please be generous and forgiving." I keenly noticed that Director's gaze frequently darted towards Sage on the ground. It wasn't until their eyes met that he suddenly roared, "Get out." Valerie, however, lacked discretion and tugged at Marcus's sleeve. "Marcus, you're the CEO of Thompson. Why should you be afraid of him, a mere?" Marcus immediately covered her mouth with his hand. "Shut up. Say less if you don't want to die." He quickly turned to Director, bowing and scraping. "My wife is ignorant, Director. Please don't take it to heart." Director's fingers cracked. "I'll count to 3. Still not leaving?" Marcus, as if granted a reprieve, dragged a tearful Valerie away in a panic. Director gave Sage a deep, almost imperceptible nod, then turned and left with his team. The onlookers, too, scattered like birds. I quickly knelt to help Sage. "Are you all right?" Though his eyes were unfocused, he looked directly at me, his gaze as deep as a clear pool. Only then did I realize that despite his tattered clothes, the intact side of his face had extremely sharp and handsome features, with an inherent air of extraordinary poise. I carefully checked him for injuries. He suddenly spoke, his voice low and hoarse, yet unexpectedly pleasant. "Call me Sage from now on." I paused, then smiled faintly. "All right, Sage. You can stay with me from now on. My shop happens to need a security guard." The corner of his mouth curved upward, and a warm smile appeared on the intact side of his face. "All right." Before I knew it, it was the day Marcus married Valerie. News had spread throughout the downtown commercial district, and my cafe bookstore saw many acquaintances coming to gather information. I leaned by the window of my second-floor office, watching the wedding motorcade from the Thompson in the distance, and couldn't help but sneer. The display seemed grand, but it was all for show. I heard the Thompsons' cash flow had been very tight lately. As I was thinking, I suddenly felt a gaze. I looked down and met Marcus's complicated eyes. He stood by the wedding.He car in an expensive suit, looking up at me, an indescribably strange expression on his face. "How irritating," I said coldly, slamming the window shut. Yet, I could still hear the noisy fireworks and music outside. The manager ran upstairs, fuming. "Ms. Grace, guess what? That actually had people scatter wedding candies in front of our shop, saying it was to share their joy with the whole city." I sneered, casually flipping open an account book. Let her cause a scene. In the days that followed, Marcus and Valerie found various ways to flaunt their wealth in front of me. First, I heard Marcus, to please his new bride, had specifically bought a luxurious villa on the east. Then, rumors spread that Valerie's handbags alone cost hundreds of thousands, all limited editions. The most ridiculous thing was that Valerie, for some reason, insisted Marcus invest in a high-end bubble tea shop for her. To show off, Marcus deliberately chose a location directly opposite my cafe bookstore. The next morning, a clanging sound of construction suddenly erupted across the street. I pushed open my shop door to see the previously vacant storefront opposite undergoing lively renovations. Valerie was directing the workers as they hung the sign. She wore a sequined miniskirt, picking and choosing. Oddly, the storefront was painted in garish fluorescent pink, with exaggerated cartoon stickers on the windows. Several girls in maid costumes, dressed in vulgar fashion, were handing out flyers at the entrance, drawing frequent glances from passers-by. What kind of style is this? The manager's eyes widened. I frowned and shook my head. A cheap stunt. By evening, something even more astonishing occurred. Valerie appeared at the shop entrance wearing a nearly transparent gauze top, heavily made up, calling out to passers-by. "Hello, handsome guys and beautiful ladies. Valerie's Love Bubble Tea is newly opened, buy one get one free, plus special benefits." As night fell, piercing electron. Icy music and the sounds of men and women laughing boisterously emanated from across the street, continuing late into the night. Nearby residents, harassed by the constant noise, complained, but Marcus's people blocked their complaints. "Ms. Grace, our sales these past 2 days." The manager worriedly flipped through the account book. I rubbed my temples, looking at the sparse number of customers, and sighed. Sage sat opposite me, his long fingers gently tapping the table. Though technically a security guard, he often acted more like my strategist. "Don't worry," he suddenly said, his voice deep and certain. "Her antics won't last long." I looked at him in surprise. "How do you know?" He stopped tapping, looking directly at me. Although he always acted normally, I felt as if he could see through everything. He pressed his lips together, then said softly, "My eyes may not see, but my mind is clear. Such a low-level competitive tactic won't last." Undersleed, her bubble tea shop launched a new promotional event called The Kissing. That night, Valerie's Love Bubble Tea was exceptionally noisy. Valerie had actually ordered a small stage to be set up at the entrance, surrounded by neon lights, proclaiming that the couple with the longest kiss would win a huge cash prize and free bubble tea for life. I stood by the window on the second floor of my cafe bookstore, watching Valerie personally demonstrate, passionately embracing and kissing a strange male customer on stage, her actions bold and explicit. The crowd below was packed with onlookers, whistles and cheers rose in a continuous wave. Just then, a black Rolls-Royce slowly drove past. The car window lowered, revealing the ashen faces of Marcus's parents. "What an outrage!" Chairman roared, and the car immediately stopped. He trembled as he pointed at the stage. "Woman, are you trying to completely disgrace the Thompson family?" Valerie, far from being afraid, kissed with even more fervor, retorting between kiss. "Yes, father-in-law, what are you talking about? I'm just attracting customers for the shop. What era do you think this is?" "You." Mrs. Eleanor trembled with rage. "Where's Marcus? Let him see the wonderful wife he's married. Marcus can't control me." Valerie spun around, her gauze top billowing. "He said I could do whatever I pleased." Chairman immediately suffered a heart attack, and the driver and assistant helped him into the car with great difficulty to take him to the hospital. The onlookers pointed and whispered, discussing among themselves. When rushed over after hearing the news, he saw his father being helped into the car. His face turned pale. He roughly pulled Valerie off the stage. "Are you crazy? Pregnant and still dressed like that, causing such a scene? Aren't you afraid of harming the baby? What do you know?" Valerie pushed him away impatiently. "Modern medicine is very advanced. Besides, only the weak are unworthy to be my child." Marcus seemed stunned by her words. "What about me? After a month of marriage, you're out every night and returning only in the morning. Have you ever come home to share a meal with my parents? Don't try to restrict me with your outdated customs." Valerie shrieked. "Who was it that said I could do as I please after we got married?" "You." Veins pulsed visibly on Marcus's forehead. He turned away in disappointment, his eyes meeting mine. Valerie followed his gaze to me and immediately exploded in rage. "Marcus, are you regretting it? Are you still thinking about Grace?" Her sharp nails repeatedly poked Marcus's chest. "Enough!" Marcus finally erupted, shoving her away violently. Valerie staggered a few steps and fell to the ground. "Valerie!" Marcus panicked and moved to help her up, but she slapped his hand away fiercely. Valerie looked up and glared at me, the venomous hatred in her eyes sending a chill down my spine. Bang! The window suddenly slammed shut. I turned and saw Sage standing by the window. A month passed, and after cleaning himself up, the intact side of his face appeared even more ruggedly handsome. Yet, his eyes always carried a hint of melancholy from having experienced so much. Sage's earlobes were visibly flushed, and he cleared his throat. It's an unpleasant sight, don't let it bother you. It's late. Let's go back. I nodded and left. Sage stayed to check the shop's security. As I stepped into the apartment building lobby, I was suddenly enveloped by a strong smell of alcohol. Grace, I miss you so much. Marcus, completely drunk, lunged at me, pinning me against the elevator door, his hot lips nearing my neck. My body went cold, and I desperately pushed him away. Let go. Get off me. But he didn't budge an inch, and with hazy, drunken eyes, he began to reminisce. Do you remember, that year in college, I set off fireworks across the entire campus for you? You said you'd marry me. My stomach churned. The young man who once promised the moon and stars turned into a stranger after Valerie appeared, but kept rambling. Grace, I know you still love me. I can get a divorce, I can give you everything. In your dreams. I sharply nailed him in the groin, and Marcus finally let go with a cry of pain. The drunken haze in his eyes instantly turned into rage. Once I have you, we'll see if you're still so stubborn. He hoisted me onto his shoulder, trying to kick open my apartment door. I struggled fiercely, but he wrapped my wrists with his tie. The moment my collar was torn open, I closed my eyes in despair. Bang! Just then, there was a muffled thud, and the pressure on me suddenly disappeared. I opened my eyes to see Sage, who had appeared out of nowhere, having knocked Marcus to the ground with a single punch. You bastard! How dare you spoil my good time? Marcus lunged back, a savage look on his face. I cried out in alarm, Sage, be careful. However, in a flash, before I even fully registered Sage's movements, Marcus was pinned to the ground with his arms twisted behind his back, unable to move. Sage placed a foot on his back, his voice as cold as ice. Get out. Come near her again, and I'll cripple you. Marcus scrambled up, disheveled, and at the elevator door, he turned back, snarling, you two just wait. In the night, the malice in his eyes was even more intense than Valerie's. After that, Marcus began to appear frequently near the cafe bookstore. Whenever I worked at the counter, I could feel a chilling gaze from outside the window. Sage warned him a few times, but the pest was like a stubborn leech, always finding a way to sneak back. This morning, before the morning fog had even lifted, I had just pushed open the shop door when I saw Marcus standing under the sycamore tree at the street corner. He was wearing a black suit, his eyes fixed on me with an ominous gaze. My heart skipped a beat, and I quickly moved to close the door, but then I heard him speak in a sinister tone, Grace, I won't let you leave again. My back pressed against the door, my heart hammered. A familiar sound of footsteps approached, and Sage's voice reached my ears, Grace, just wait for me a little longer. I won't let him bother you again. I looked up sharply, surprised to see him. This was the first time Sage had called me by my name so intimately, no longer the distant Ms. Grace. His eyes were deep, and his lips were tightly pressed together. You. I opened my mouth, but didn't know what to say. Over these past days of daily interactions, I had already noticed his special care for me. Every time Marcus appeared, Sage was always the first to step in front of me. At night, when I was poring over account books, he would silently bring me a cup of hot milk. One time when I had a cold and fever, he actually stayed outside my apartment door all night. Sage seemed to realize his slip of the tongue, and the tips of his ears turned visibly flushed. In the days that followed, Sage became elusive. Sometimes he would be gone all day, returning well-dressed but with a tired look on his face, his knuckles occasionally showing faint, unnoticed scrapes. When I asked him where he went, he only said he was taking care of some private matters. Meanwhile, the story of Marcus harassing me daily at the shop was completely distorted. Rumors spread like wildfire through the city. The social circles were buzzing, saying that I, his former fiancé, was unwilling to give up and was using tactics to entangle a married man. This morning, Sage was again nowhere to be found. I had just finished brewing a pot of coffee when the shop door was violently kicked open. Grace! Valerie burst in, flanked by 4 burly men, her demeanor aggressive. Today, she deliberately carried her hundreds of thousands limited edition handbag and wore heavy makeup. As soon as she spoke, she kicked over the coffee table in front of me. Ceramic cups and saucers crashed to the floor, and hot coffee splashed onto my trousers. Ms. Grace! The manager rushed forward to intervene, but a burly man twisted his arms behind his back and pressed him against the wall. Valerie grabbed my hair, her sharp nails scraping painfully against my scalp. She dragged me toward the door, my slippers sliding on the broken ceramic shards. "Everyone, come see," she yelled at the street, immediately attracting passers-by who stopped to watch. "This is the cheap harlot who was annulled by the Thompson family. A real slut, constantly seducing other women's husbands." My lower back hit the doorframe, and the pain made my vision blur. Valerie escalated, reaching out to tear my shirt. "Let everyone see how this flesh seduces other women's husbands." The moment my collar was ripped open, a dark shadow swept past like a gust of wind. Valerie screamed, clutching her dislocated wrist as she stumbled backward. Sage stood in front of me, and though he wore only a simple black t-shirt, he was like a drawn sword. His eyes were terrifyingly cold, and his voice was terrifyingly low. "Who gave you the nerve to touch her?" Valerie's face was ashen with pain, yet she still yelled defiantly, "A poor security guard dares to touch me? Do you know who I am? My husband is." Her words abruptly stopped, her gaze suddenly frozen on the street corner. I followed her line of sight and saw several black official cars parked, with several people in prosecutor uniforms and financial crimes police uniforms striding quickly toward us. Leading them was Director, whom I had seen before. "Consider yourself lucky today," Valerie said through gritted teeth as the burly man helped her up. Before leaving, she didn't forget to give me a vicious glare. "We'll see about this." With that, she fled in a panic, not even bothering to pick up her designer handbag that had fallen to the ground. Sage carefully helped me into the inner lounge, retrieved the first aid kit, and began to treat my wounds and swollen scalp. His movements were extremely gentle, yet his fingertips trembled slightly, as if he was desperately suppressing his rage. Hiss, when the antiseptic touched the scrape on my forehead, I couldn't help but wince. Sage immediately stopped, his deep eyes looking at me. "Does it hurt?" I shook my head. "I'm fine." Looking at his tightly furrowed brow, I sighed. "This can't go on. Perhaps I should consider starting a new relationship. Only then will they leave me alone." Sage's hand, which was applying the band-aid to mine, suddenly paused. Silence fell over the room, broken only by the sound of traffic outside the window. "Let's be together," he blurted out, his voice tight. I looked up in surprise. The morning light, filtering through the blinds, cast a golden glow around his sharply defined profile. Tiny beads of sweat still clung to his prominent nose, and his thin lips were pressed into a tight line. When I didn't respond, his earlobes visibly flushed red, yet he stubbornly repeated, "I'm serious." The traffic noise outside became a mere background hum. "Okay. I heard myself say. Sage froze completely, as if he hadn't expected me to agree. After a moment, he slowly exhaled, the corners of his mouth turning up in a faint yet genuine smile. The sunlight caught in his deep-set eyes, reflecting a hint of warm brilliance. "I'll protect you. Always," he whispered, taking my hand. We decided to get engaged, and the ceremony would be simple. On the day of our engagement, as I stepped out of the apartment building, Marcus blocked my path. He saw my elegant attire and the gift box in my hand. His eyes flashed with surprise, which quickly turned to anger. "You're getting engaged to that pauper? Grace, come back with me. I'm already filing for divorce." Valerie also got out of the car, her smile sickly sweet. "Yes, Grace, I was wrong before. I'll give Marcus back to you, get lost," I said coldly. "Don't sully my path." Marcus exploded in rage, reaching out to grab me. Sage moved swiftly, immediately pushing him away. Seeing he was no match, Marcus's eyes filled with fierce malice. He suddenly grabbed a baseball bat from his car and swung it viciously at Sage's head. It was a brutal blow, clearly intended to be fatal. "Sage!" I cried out. Just then, several financial crimes police officers burst out from a nearby flower bed, quickly subduing Marcus and seizing the bat. Director also hurried over, stopping in front of Sage and nodding slightly. "Sage, all the evidence has been collected. We can close the net now." "Sage?" Marcus, pinned to the ground, stared at Sage in disbelief. "The family, didn't the Eastwood family go bankrupt?" "Bankrupt?" Director sneered, adjusting his collar. "It was merely a ruse to lure the snake out of its hole. Did you really think your Thompson's petty tricks could shake the Eastwood?" I suddenly remembered the rumors that had shocked the business world a few months ago. At the time, the Eastwood had suffered a sudden heavy blow, its core projects failing one after another, and its cash flow severe. And, as the heir, had gone missing after a suspicious car accident, his fate unknown. It turned out, this had all been a meticulously planned setup. Why was none other than Sage, the rumored deceased heir of the Eastwood family. Later I learned that Sage had once been an elite special forces operative, and Director was his former superior. During that accident the Eastwood suffered, he barely escaped a deadly pursuit, and with nowhere else to turn, he sought out Director. They suspected it wasn't an accident at all, but rather a meticulously orchestrated act of corporate espionage. To deceive the enemy's informants, Director gave him a new identity, having him pose as a disfigured, blind beggar. The scar-covered face was the most ingenious disguise, the grayish pupils were specially made contact lenses. All the while, they had been secretly investigating the truth. Take them away, Sage commanded. The SWAT officer's director had brought immediately handcuffed Marcus and Valerie. What right do you have to arrest me? Marcus struggled. Sage stood with his hands behind his back, his voice chilling. Valerie is suspected of corporate espionage, stealing Eastwood's core technology, and selling it to foreign enterprises. As for you, Marcus, not only were you aware, but you also used Thompson to assist in money laundering and fence stolen goods. The evidence is conclusive. Marcus stared blankly at Valerie, momentarily forgetting to struggle. Valerie suddenly burst into wild laughter. Ha ha ha. I just wanted to make more money, what's wrong with that? I raised my hand and slapped her. Absurd. Operating legally and striving for innovation is the right path. How dare crooks and swindlers like you run rampant? Valerie's laughter abruptly stopped, and she glared viciously at me. You've lived a pampered life, grown up in luxury. What right do you have to lecture me? Before I could retort, Sage pulled me protectively behind him. He took a tablet from Director's hand and turned the screen towards Valerie. Did you really think I was living under a false identity and laying low for so long, only to accomplish nothing? Displayed prominently on the screen were Valerie's communication records and financial transactions with foreign companies, as well as surveillance footage of her infiltrating Eastwood to steal confidential information. That car accident 6 months ago? You tampered with my car. Sage's voice was as cold as ice. The technical data you stole had long been replaced with fake information by us. The enormous funds you invested are now all lost. It turned out that by feigning destitution and infiltrating the lower ranks, he not only uncovered the corporate espionage network but also set up a flawless counter-espionage plan. Valerie's face gradually turned ashen, and she finally collapsed to the ground. Sage stared at her, enunciating each word. The future is created with your own hands, not through theft and speculation. The engagement ceremony proceeded as planned, with the location changed to an Eastwood family's private estate. As we passed the Thompson Tower, we saw seizure notices posted on the entrance, with law enforcement personnel going in and out. Faintly from a distance, we could hear Marcus's enraged roars and Valerie's screams. This is all your fault. If it weren't for you, how would my Thompson have collapsed? You and that child of unknown paternity in your belly can both go to hell. I squeezed my palms together and exhaled slowly. The person he had desperately defended had ultimately turned against him, plummeting into the abyss with him. As we exchanged engagement rings, my snobbish father shamelessly tried to cozy up to us, but Sage unceremoniously showed him the door. Uncle, you publicly severed ties with Grace back then, claiming no further association. Many people know this. My father, filled with regret, could only slink away. On the balcony that night, Sage gently held me. The city's Neon lights cast a soft glow on his handsome profile. I knew that in this life, we would both find a truly happy ending. Thank you for listening to today's story. If you liked this video, please like and share it with your friends. We look forward to hearing your thoughts in the comments section. Feel free to share your views, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more exciting stories. See you next time.